14 seconds. That is how long it took for Senator John Kennedy to ask Kash Patel one simple question. Watch Patel's face go from confident to panicked and expose the single most humiliating incident in Patel's entire career. The day he was physically escorted out of a classified Pentagon briefing by security guards because he was so visibly intoxicated that the briefing officer stopped mid-sentence and told him to leave. Not asked to leave, not suggested he step out. Told to leave by security personnel who documented the entire incident in an official report that Kennedy was holding in his hand and was about to read out loud on camera. Watch what happens when Kennedy asks if Patel remembers October 4th, 2022. Watch Patel's eyes widen slightly as he realizes Kennedy knows about something Patel thought was buried. Watch him try to deflect, claim memory issues, suggest it was a misunderstanding, and watch Kennedy calmly pull out the incident report with Patel's name, the date, the time, and the reason for removal all documented in official Pentagon security logs. And watch 14 seconds turn into 9 minutes of the most detailed public humiliation ever inflicted on a witness who thought his drinking problem was private until Kennedy made it very, very public. You need to see this from the beginning because what happened in that hearing room is not just about one incident. It is about a pattern of behavior so severe that security professionals documented it, witnesses remembered it years later, and Kennedy found every piece of evidence proving it happened exactly the way Patel hoped nobody would ever discover. Let me set the scene for you. Senate Armed Services Committee, Russell Building Room 325, 52 minutes into Kennedy's questioning about Patel's alcohol use. Patel had already admitted to hospital visits, blood tests, and treatment. But he had maintained that his drinking never affected his actual job performance, never compromised briefings, never created security incidents. Kennedy had been patient through all of it, letting Patel build his defense that yes, he drank, but no, it never mattered at work. And now Kennedy was about to destroy that entire narrative with one incident report. Patel sat at the witness table, looking relieved that the questioning about hospital records was over. His posture relaxed slightly, his hands resting on the table instead of gripping the edge. His attorneys sat behind him checking their phones, clearly thinking the worst was over. Kennedy sat across from him with a thin file folder he had not opened yet, reading glasses perched on his nose, and that expression he gets when he has been waiting for the right moment to deploy the worst piece of evidence. The room was quiet. Cameras were rolling, but the energy felt like the hearing might be winding down. Then Kennedy opened the folder. He pulled out a single document and set it in front of him without looking at it. "Mr. Patel, let me ask you about a specific incident." Patel nodded. "Of course, Senator." "Do you recall attending a classified briefing on October 4th, 2022? Patel's face changed. The relaxation disappeared. His eyes focused sharply on Kennedy. "I attended many briefings. I would need to check my calendar to confirm that specific date." "Let me help your memory. October 4th, 2022, Tuesday, 2 p.m., Pentagon, room 3E88. Oh, briefing topic, Chinese satellite reconnaissance capabilities. Ring any bells?" Patel's hands moved back to gripping the table edge. "I may have attended that briefing." "You may have? According to the attendance log, you signed in at 1:47 p.m., so you definitely attended." "The question is, do you remember what happened during that briefing?" If you have made it this far and this matters to you, subscribe now and hit the bell, because what comes next is Kennedy reading an incident report that proves Patel was removed from the room and Patel's denials falling apart in real time. Patel's voice was careful. "I do not recall any specific incidents during that briefing." "You do not recall being asked to leave?" Patel froze. "I was not asked to leave any briefing." "I did not say asked. I said you were asked to leave. Do you recall that?" "No, Senator, I do not recall being asked to leave any classified briefing." Kennedy looked down at the document. "Then let me refresh your memory. This is a Pentagon Security Incident Report, case number S, I-2022-10847, filed October 4th, 2022 at 2:23 p.m. The reporting officer is Major Sarah Chen, Pentagon Force Protection Agency. Should I read it? Patel looked at his attorneys. Both of them leaned forward. One whispered something. Patel shook his head and turned back to Kennedy. Senator, I do not know what report you are referring to, but I was never removed from any briefing. I did not say removed yet, but since you brought it up, yes, you were removed. Would you like me to read the report, or would you like to tell me what happened? There is nothing to tell, because it did not happen. Kennedy put on his reading glasses. Security Incident Report, October 4th, 2022, 14:23 hours. Incident type, personnel removed from secure facility due to impairment. Location, Pentagon Room 3, E880. Subject, Kash Patel, DOD Chief of Staff Office. Reporting Officer, Major Sarah Chen. Incident description. Kennedy looked up. Should I continue? Patel's face was red. That report, if it exists, is inaccurate. So you are calling Major Chen a liar? I am saying I was not removed from any briefing. Kennedy continued reading. At approximately 14:10 hours, Subject Patel entered briefing room, appearing disoriented. Subject took seat in rear of room. At approximately 14:18 hours, Subject's head dropped forward and he appeared to lose consciousness briefly. At 14:19 hours, Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Wade approached Subject and asked if he needed medical attention. Subject stated he was fine. At 14:21 hours, Briefing Officer Colonel James Morrison paused briefing and requested Subject step outside. Subject refused. At 14:22 hours, I was summoned by Colonel Morrison. Upon entering room, I observed Subject slumped in chair, eyes unfocused, strong odor of alcohol emanating from Subject. Kennedy paused. Want me to keep reading, or do you remember now? Patel's voice was shaking. That is a complete fabrication. A fabrication signed by 3 Pentagon security officers and filed in official records? I do not know who wrote that or why, but it did not happen. Kennedy flipped the page. Let me continue. At 14:23 hours, I approached Subject and requested he accompany me out of the briefing room. Subject stated, quote, I have clearance to be here. I explained that clearance was not the issue and that his condition required him to leave. Subject attempted to stand and stumbled. Lieutenant Colonel Wade assisted in steadying Subject. Subject then stated, quote, I'm fine, just tired. I repeated request to exit room. Subject complied. I escorted Subject to corridor outside briefing room. Subject leaned against wall for support. I asked Subject if he had consumed alcohol. Subject denied. I noted strong odor of alcohol, slurred speech, and inability to stand without support. I contacted DOD Medical Services. Subject refused medical evaluation. I documented incident and notified Subject's supervisor. Drop a comment right now if you think Patel is going to keep denying this because Kennedy is about to read witness statements that make denial impossible. Patel stood up. Senator, this is outrageous. I am being accused of behavior that never occurred based on a report I have never seen. Kennedy did not look up from the document. Sit down, Mr. Patel. I will not sit here and... Sit down, or I will have the Sergeant-at-Arms remove you the same way Major Chen removed you from that briefing. Patel's attorneys both grabbed his arms. He sat. Kennedy continued. Major Chen's report includes witness statements. Would you like to hear them? Patel did not answer. I will take that as a yes. Witness Statement 1. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Wade. Quote, I was seated 3 chairs from Mr. Patel during the briefing. Approximately 8 minutes after briefing began, I noticed Mr. Patel's head drop forward. I thought he might be looking at notes, but his posture suggested he had fallen asleep or lost consciousness. I approached and asked if he was okay. He looked up at me, but did not immediately respond. When he did speak, his words were slurred. I could smell alcohol. I stepped back and informed Colonel Morrison. End quote. Kennedy flipped another page. Witness Statement 2. Colonel James Morrison, Briefing Officer. Quote, I was presenting classified intelligence on Chinese satellite capabilities when I noticed a disruption in the rear of the room. I observed Mr. Patel slumped in his chair. Lieutenant Colonel Wade was attempting to speak with him. I paused the briefing and approached. It was immediately apparent that Mr. Patel was impaired. His eyes were unfocused, his speech was incoherent, and there was a strong smell of alcohol. I have conducted hundreds of classified briefings, and I have never had to stop one due to attendee intoxication. I requested security remove him immediately." End quote. Patel's hands were trembling. "Those statements are lies. Both officers are lying? They are mistaken about you being drunk and slumped over in a classified briefing?" "I was not drunk." "Then explain why two field-grade officers documented that you were." "I cannot explain why they would lie, but I was not impaired." Kennedy pulled another document. "Then let me show you one more thing. This is a text message from your phone, sent at 1:47 p.m. on October 4th, 2022, the same day. The message is to your assistant. It says, quote, 'Cancel my 3 p.m., not feeling well, going home.' You sent that message 24 minutes after you were escorted out of the briefing. Why were you going home if you were fine?" Patel stared at the document. "I was feeling ill." "Ill from what?" "I do not recall." "You do not recall why you went home sick on the same day security documented you were drunk in a briefing?" "I may have had a stomach issue." "Did the stomach issue cause the slurred speech?" Patel did not answer. Subscribe now, because what happens in the next 2 minutes is Kennedy revealing what the briefing was about and why Patel being drunk during it is a national security catastrophe. Kennedy sat back. "Mr. Patel, let me tell you why this incident matters more than your other drinking episodes. The briefing you were removed from was about Chinese satellite reconnaissance capabilities. Specifically, it covered gaps in Chinese coverage that U.S. intelligence could exploit. That information is classified at the TS/SCI level, because if China knew we knew about their coverage gaps, they could fix them. Do you understand what I am telling you?" Patel nodded slowly. "And you were in that briefing, drunk, slumped over, barely conscious, while that information was being presented. Do you remember any of it?" "I remember some of the briefing." "Some? You remember some of the most sensitive intelligence about Chinese capabilities?" "I remember the general topic." "But not the details?" "Not all of the details." "Because you were drunk?" "I was not drunk." Kennedy leaned forward. "Mr. Patel, you cannot have it both ways. Either you were sober and you should remember the briefing, or you were drunk, and that is why you do not remember." "Which is it?" Patel's voice was barely audible. "I do not remember the briefing clearly." "Because you were drunk." "I do not know why I do not remember." "Security documented why. You were intoxicated. You were removed. And now you are sitting here telling me you do not remember intelligence about our primary adversary because of a condition you refuse to admit." Patel did not respond. A senator from Nebraska jumped in. "Mr. Patel, did you attend any other briefings that same day?" Patel turned toward her. "I do not believe so." "Did you attend any briefings the next day?" "I would need to check my calendar." The senator looked at Kennedy. "Senator Kennedy, does the security report indicate whether Mr. Patel's clearance was suspended after this incident?" Kennedy shook his head. "No suspension, no investigation, no documentation that his supervisor was even notified beyond the initial report. The incident was filed and forgotten." "How is that possible?" "That is exactly what I am trying to determine. Someone who is removed from a classified briefing for intoxication should have their clearance suspended immediately pending investigation. That did not happen, which means either the report was buried or someone decided to ignore it." The senator from Nebraska turned back to Patel. "Who was your supervisor in October 2022? "The acting Secretary of Defense." "Did he know about this incident?" "I do not know." "Did you tell him?" I do not recall. Did anyone tell him? I do not know. Kennedy spoke again. Mr. Patel, Major Chen's report says she notified your supervisor. Do you deny that notification occurred? I do not know if it occurred. But if it did occur, your supervisor knew you were drunk in a classified briefing and did nothing? I cannot speak for what my supervisor knew or did. Because you never discussed it with him? I do not recall discussing it. You do not recall discussing being removed from a briefing for being drunk with the person you reported to? Patel shook his head. Convenient, the chairman intervened. Mr. Patel, I want to be very clear. You are testifying under oath that you do not remember this incident? Patel looked at the chairman. I am testifying that I do not believe the incident occurred as described in that report. But you admit you were at that briefing? I was at a briefing that day, yes. And you admit you left early? I left because I was feeling ill. And you admit you texted your assistant saying you were going home? Yes. But you deny being drunk? Yes. The chairman looked at Kennedy. Senator Kennedy, is there any objective evidence of Mr. Patel's condition that day beyond witness observations? Kennedy pulled one final document. There is. After Major Chen escorted Mr. Patel out of the briefing, she filed a formal report recommending he submit to alcohol testing. That recommendation was sent to his supervisor and to DOD security. No test was ever administered. But 8 hours later, Mr. Patel checked himself into Sibley Hospital complaining of chest pain. Hospital records show he was diagnosed with anxiety attack secondary to alcohol withdrawal and had a blood alcohol content of 0.18 on admission. 8 hours after being removed from the briefing, he still had a BAC of 0.18, which means when he was in that briefing, his BAC was likely over 0.25. Kennedy looked at Patel. You were not just drunk, you were dangerously drunk in a classified briefing about Chinese intelligence.